Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make ragdoll and unragdoll. So we're going to be able to ragdoll any character we want and also unragdoll that character. And I'll also be explaining a bit about how ragdolls work. So let's get straight into it. The first thing we're going to do is create a script inside of workspace. Server script inside of workspace. Okay, so we're going to first start with our function called ragdoll. And then we're also going to make a function called onRagdoll. And within these parameters, these parentheses, we're going to include who we want to ragdoll. So we're just going to call that character, so car or char or however you say it, which is just character. And then we'll make a character here. And then we're going to be calling these functions with the parameters. So let's say we want to ragdoll this rig. Let's select this rig. Let's say we want to ragdoll this rig. What we're going to say is ragdoll workspace calling with for child ragdoll rig, and that will pass this rig into this function as character. Now we're going to actually be making that character ragdoll. So in order to ragdoll, the essence of a ragdoll is basically changing the motor 60 joints. This is going to sound a bit complicated, but we're changing the motor 60 joints inside of the character into something called the ball socket constraint. So let me just write this. I'm going to write for I, v in pairs character colon get descendants do. When you write descendants is a level further below children. And we're going to say if v colon is a motor 60. What this is a function does is it checks if the object we're talking about, if its class name is whatever we put in here. So if v colon is a motor 60. And so what we're going to say is if v colon is a motor 60, then we're going to add a ball socket constraint. Equals instance.new ball socket constraint. We're going to add an attachment 1 or attachment 0. Okay, we're going to set attachment 0 dot parent to be v dot part 0 or v dot v dot part 0, and then we're going to say attachment 1 dot parent equals v dot part 1. Now the reason why we can say part 0 part 1 is because we're saying if v is a motor 60. Motor 60s have that part 0 part 1 property. So like if I insert a motor 60 and I click on it, you see part 0 part 1, we're setting that motor 60s part 0 and part 1 to attachment 0 and attachment 1. Actually we're not setting the part 0 part 1, but we're setting the attachment's parent to part 0 and part 1. So whenever we play the game, I'm just going to run this like this, and we check out the game, and we go on our character. We'll see each body part has a motor 60, and we see the connection. So for neck, the connection is between the torso, the upper torso, and the head. So that's the neck. That's the part 0, part 1. And then what that attachment is doing is it's creating it's parenting the attachment to, for example, the torso, upper torso, and then attachment 1, for example, the head. And it creates 2 attachments there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set the ball socket constraints attachments to be equal to these ones. So I'm going to say, first of all, ball socket constraint dot parent equals v dot parent. So the motor 60s parent. So if we look in here and we check our character, motor 60 dot parent left lower leg, and then left upper leg, left lower leg. So we're going to create 2 attachments here, and then this is my left lower leg. So it'll be 2 attachments here, and then the ball socket constraint, which would be attached to this one and this one. And then we're going to say, now we're actually going to do that attachment, that attaching. So we're going to say ball socket constraint attachment 0 equals attachment 0, ball socket constraint attachment 1 equals attachment 1. Attachment 0 dot c frame. So now we're setting the position is equal to v dot c0, attachment 1 dot c frame equals v dot c1. And then we're going to add some properties, ball socket constraint these are what I've just found to be pretty decent for me. The limits enabled isn't really an optional thing. If you don't want the body to like just completely go into itself, then you want limits enabled. And same thing with twist limits enabled. You want that to be on, otherwise the limbs will have a completely free rotation and it won't look realistic like a ragdoll. So, and then we're going to say v.enabled equals false. And then finally we're going to say character.humanoid.platform stand equals true. Now if I run this, you'll see that it just falls like that. And this works with R6 and R15, so you don't need to worry about that. And now let me just explain how this works. So obviously I've explained this portion where it says the attachment 0, attachment 1 to, for example, left lower leg, left upper leg, and then it connects the ball socket constraint to that attachment 0 and attachment 1, which is set here. Here we're just setting the C frame, so kind of the position. And then we're setting the max friction torque limits and no twist limits. Okay, so the reason why we're using ball socket constraint is because they allow for a realistic rotation in the part. So if I run this, you'll see that this part gets connected to this part and there's a rotation, and it's the same with the limbs. So now the reason why we have twist limits enabled is, here I'll just show you. You'll see that right now it's just ragdolling fine because it has the limits enabled, right? You'll see none of the body parts really rotate in an unrealistic position. But if I disable these and I run the game, you'll see that it's now in an odd position, and the joints are kind of, they have no restriction on that constraint. So they have no restriction, and so the twist is just very like unrealistic. Now this is you can also keep it like this if you want a really like bouncy ragdoll like this one. But yeah, that's up to you there. And then the max friction torque. So the max friction torque allows you to reduce it constantly swinging in air. So if you're ragdolling and your arm swinging, the max friction torque reduces how much it's constantly swinging in the air. And then we're setting the v.enabled equal to false. Now v, remember, is the motor 6D. So we're saying motor 6D.enabled equals false. The reason why we don't just destroy the motor 6D and we disable it is because if you destroy the motor 6D, then all the limbs will fall off. Now if you disable the motor 6D, all the limbs will still fall off. But the difference is, if you disable it, instead of just destroying it, you can re-enable it and you can set all the limbs back to normal. If you destroy it, you cannot bring it back unless you rebuild the rig from scratch. So that's why we're disabling the motor 60s rather than destroying it. So let's just add the UNRAGDOLL functionality right now. So we're gonna say is for I, v in pairs, same thing, character, get descendants. The v is a ball socket constraint, then v destroy. So we're not destroying the motor 60 here, we're destroying the ball socket constraints. That's for the actual ragdoll itself. But whenever we detect a motor 6D, which I'm writing here, instead of we're going to be re-enabling it. So we're going to say v.enabled equals true, and then we'll say character.humanoid.platform that equals false. So now when I've re-enabled this, you'll see that if I do like a task await, and then I say UNRAGDOLL, you'll see the body parts completely fall off, but then it gets reconnected because I've enabled the module, because I've enabled the motor 60. If I destroy it though, if I destroy the motor 6Ds, I can't just say v.enabled because it's destroyed. It's no longer there. There's no such thing as motor 6D in the body part because I've destroyed it. So I can, you know, destroy it, but now it's going to error and say that there is no motor 60 for you to re-enable. It's not going to error, but it's not going to set it back up because there is no motor 60. So it never actually goes through in this if statement. So that's why we're doing enabling instead of destroying. Okay. And now what is this line right here? So the reason why we have this line, I'm going to just set it to, I'm going to just comment this out so you can see what it's like without it. You'll see that the character is kind of standing. Here, let me comment out the UNRAGDOLL. The character is kind of like, it's not connected to the ground. It's trying to stand. And it sometimes gives off the effect that it's levitating, which we don't want, right? So if I play it here, you'll see that it's levitating, right? So that we can counter that by changing the platform stand value to true. Now, what the platform stand is basically if it's false, Roblox tries to keep the body upright. So if platform stand is false, Roblox will try to keep the body upright. But if platform stand is true, it'll no longer try to keep the body upright. And that's basically it for ragdolls and unragdolls. Hopefully this video is helpful in any way. If you guys have any questions, make sure to join the Discord, and I'll see you on the next one.